Welcome to the Friends of Wood Lake virtual dinner. My name's Amy Markle and I'm the Recreation Services Director, and I thank you for being here tonight. I thank you for your flexibility and support of this year's dinner. Before we get started with our wonderful program, I'd like to give a special thank you to our Friends of Wood Lake board and our Wood Lake Nature Center staff who have come together in a pinch and put together tonight's event. So thank you very much. And also thank you to our friends at Local Roots Cafe who have partnered with us in putting together meals for tonight and gift cards for people to enjoy a meal there at a later time. So thank you. I'd also like to give a special thank you to the many organizations and businesses who have generously supported this event, both financially and through items that they have donated to our auction. And our auction is up. The link is on the website. So please check it out. There's dozens of items to bid on throughout the week, so I encourage you to bid often and bid high. All of the proceeds will go to support Wood Lake Nature Center and will be needed more than ever in the coming year. I think in light of our current COVID-19 crisis, we start to really realize the true value of our local parks. It's harder than ever to get out to a state park or a national park, and it's our local park systems that are really providing a sense of comfort and wellness to a lot of people. So Wood Lake is going to need your support in the coming year. So again, just continue throughout the week to check out that live auction, bid often and bid high. Tonight we have a special MC with us, Mr. Sven Svengard from Care 11. He'll be joining us in just a minute, followed by our keynote speaker, Paula Smithson, who's the new Nature Center manager at Wood Lake Nature Center. So enjoy the night, and I'm glad everybody is safe at home, in the comfort of their home, and I look forward to the time when we can all be back together physically in one space supporting Wood Lake Nature Center. So thank you.
Well, hello, friends of Wood Lake Nature Center. As you can see, I'm at the Nature Center walking on your dock. No, since we can't be together in this crazy time, I'm very sad about that. But places like Wood Lake are more important than ever to provide a much needed respite from an uncertain world and a way to connect or reconnect with our natural world. We are living in a time where science is under threat, from medical science denial to climate change denial, and sadly, it's coming from some of our top leaders. Nature centers like Wood Lake provide an important opportunity to connect old and young alike to the natural world and establish that important appreciation for all wildlife and wild spaces, because we don't appreciate what we don't grow up loving and experiencing. We also know that our youth hold the future to saving our planet, species, and wilderness spaces. Programs that nature centers like Wood Lake provide are crucial in this educational element, while providing us grown-ups a playground and ability to witness wildlife. Wetlands, as we know in Minnesota, are crucial in so many ways, and we proudly protect them. I understand that the marsh is a hot spot this time of year for bird migration. I know running the lakes in Minneapolis, it's so fun in this season to see new birds show up every week on the water. And I know you all feel that natural spaces in the heart of the city in particular are true gems. When I drive to work at way too early in the morning at 3 a.m., I'm always amazed at the wildlife I see in Minneapolis. We are truly lucky to have such unique flora and fauna in the heart of urban areas. And it's a testament to people like you that work hard to protect them and keep them flourishing and always improve upon them. While Earth Day was started by a Wisconsin senator 50 years ago, we obviously share that value for environment, clean air, and water in Minnesota, which sets us truly apart from much of the rest of the country and the world. And that's important because in many ways, we are leaders in all things environmental. From our world-renowned Raptor Center, which works on restoring raptor species around the world, to our Minnesota Zoo, which is involved in things like saving Tasmanian devils, black rhino in Namibia. Those places are big picture conservation education. But in some ways, your backyard nature center is just as important because it's the thing we see, experience, hike, ski, or snowshoe right next door. So thank you, Wood Lake members, for all you do, for being members, and for continuing to be one of the gems in our metro area, and for continuing to be innovative in these crazy times. I look forward to seeing you all in person on a hike, perhaps, there when we can all return to some form of normalcy. For now, I think it's kind of cool. Nature is getting a bit of a break, from us humans.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Paula Smithson, the manager at Wood Lake Nature Center. I'm super happy you are all tuning in tonight. Of course, we were hoping to all be in one space together, and that'll happen soon enough. What I was hoping to do tonight is to share how I got to Wood Lake through interactions that I've had with birds. So early on in third grade, I had an interaction with the cardinal bird banding at a nature center I grew up going to down in Rochester. As I progressed through life, I kind of forgot about birds until I got to college, and there was a bird, a Cape May warbler, that jumped up in front of me in a roadside ditch, and it was sort of opening that door a little bit more. And then as I progressed further on, I got to spend a whole summer following redneck grebes, which are fantastic birds. Did that up in Canada. When I came back to the United States, I was fortunate enough to get to work a little more physically closely with birds, both in bird banding at different nature centers, but also with raptors. So the rest of my video today is going to focus on sort of those relationships with those raptors, different species I've worked with. I'm even going to have a couple show up with me, so you'll get to see them up close. And I'm also going to share a little bit about bird banding. We weren't able to get the birds in the nets and get bands on them this time of year because it was just too cold in the weather and the overall situation. But I'll show you some of how things work, and hopefully find an opportunity later in the summer to have you come out and see the whole process in action. Let's go. So, bird banding, why do we do it? Well, it's a pretty old way to track animals, and of course, once you catch this bird, if it's a migrating bird, your chances of catching it can be pretty slim. Some birds might have been banded 25,000 times and recaught 45. I think that's a vireo that has such a low recatch rate. But the value is you don't need a whole lot of points. As long as you've got some points, you can find out lots of different things. You can find out how long these birds live. I have a friend out at Lowry Nature Center who was trying to catch a nuthatch this year. That's been, I think he said it was 12 years in a row, and if they catch it this year, it'll set the U.S. record, which is pretty exciting. Minnesota has, I believe, currently the 3 of the top 5 longevity records for chickadees. I think it has to do with chickadees are pretty tough, and there's lots of banding going on in Minnesota. It's a pretty neat opportunity to see it happening up front and to be part of it. We can also learn not just how long birds live, but also how they move. I've heard stories of people catching a bird in Minnesota that 6 days prior had been banded in Texas. So you learn a couple things. You learn that these birds can move quite a distance in a week, where they were before and where they ended up a week later. Generally, a bird might be able to do that in less than a day, or 2 or 3 days, maybe not all 6. With some species, that movement is still unknown. Saw-whet owls are banded at several different locations across the state of Minnesota, and their migration patterns are very unknown still. People have been working with these birds since the 70s, specifically like targeting one species, and finding those movements is still, we don't know. And that's kind of the fun of the world, the natural world, is we know a lot, but we don't know everything. And once you know something, it ends up bringing up another question that you just don't know either. We can also learn about productivity and nesting success and nesting locations. A lot of times birds will come back to the same tree or the same yard year after year. And you might say, oh, I've got a cardinal. And it might very well be the same cardinal, or it might be another cardinal that took that bird's spot. You would know if you had banded it and were able to recatch it year after year. So that's where banding does come into play. Certainly with resident birds or year-round or smaller migratory birds. But it is an aluminum band. You have to recatch the bird. That's a fair amount of work. Of course, nowadays we have things like GPS and geolocators that work off the amount of sun to track latitudes. I was fortunate enough to be asked to be part of a study a few years ago working with wood thrush. In the site we were at, I always thought there were 5-6 pairs of wood thrush. These researchers from the Smithsonian and McGill University came out, and they caught over 60 birds in a week. So we had way more than I ever thought. And just a double reminder of going out early to listen for birds. When you go out at 4 in the morning, you would hear 60 birds. When you get there at 8, you hear about 6. But those birds we were banning, we were color banning, so putting two color bands in a different code so they could tell from afar what birds they were seeing, but also a little backpack, a little geolocator backpack that would take a point location every 10, 15 days. The trick with that is they didn't have the ones that you could be downloaded to your phone or to your computer. They had to recapture the birds. But we know that wood thrush come back and nest the same space every year. So the following spring, the same group came back. They called in the birds, and we ended up catching, I believe it was 8 of the 19. One of them, the antenna had broken off, so no data was collected. But the other 7 showed right where those birds spent the winter, right at a shade-grown coffee plantation in the Yucatan Peninsula. And what you also learn is all the birds in Minnesota don't all go to the same part of Mexico or Panama or wherever they're going. They kind of spread out, or maybe they go to the same one. Every bird species is different, and the more we know about where they spend the winter and their summer, and where they migrate, and what those patterns are, the better we can make. The more informed decisions we can make in terms of bird health and bird success. So I'm going to show you some of the tools and talk about the history of bird banding in North America real quickly. First of all, the banding lab started in 1920, and the banding lab is a government-run operation out of the United States Geologic Service, and they operate all the non-game birds, so robins, cardinals, woodpeckers. They're all the birds that we could put bans on. Turkeys, geese, we're not allowed to. That's done generally by state and federal wildlife agencies. So it's a whole different program, same process, different groups of birds. So, and just a little fun tidbit of history, the very first person documented to ban birds in North America was John James Audubon back in mid-1800s, and he didn't use a band like I'll be showing you in a moment, but he used silver thread to tie around the legs of eastern phoebes that were nesting on his cabin, and he went up into the nest and grabbed the nestlings, tied the thread onto their legs, and they came back the next spring. So he discovered they do leave, they do migrate, and they migrate back, and that's still some of the answers that we're trying to get with today's information. So when we are banding, the one tool I don't have here at my house is a mist net. And it's a 12 meter by 4 meter net. It's a very small mesh, so birds as small as a wren or a warbler will get caught in it. And you're able to safely extract them from those nets, bring them back to a table like this, maybe bigger, maybe smaller, depending on your operation. I know a lot of people that work out of their vehicles. At that point, the most important thing, you need to know what kind of bird you have. If you don't know the species, you let it go, because you can't mark it, because that is the key information bit that you have to have. Once you know what kind of bird you have, then you choose the band size. And these bands range in size from a 0A up to a 3. And actually up to a 10, but what I have here at my table is actually a 0A to a 2. So just for reference, a 2 will fit on a robin, and the 0A will fit on a kinglet and a lot of different warblers. A familiar bird like a chickadee gets a 0. So just a lot of the sparrows get a 1B, a random numbering system. But just like any specific process you do, you start to learn those specifics, and that's how those work. And we put them around the bird's foot. Another thing I'm missing is a bird, of course, but so the part right before their toes, and we put it right around that part of their foot, and it's going to have 9 digits, and those 9 digits will be for that bird only, and each size has its own group of numbers, and the idea would be ideally to catch that bird again in the future. But before we let it go, we want to know more than just its species. We also want to know if we can, if it's a male or a female, and also if it's how old it is. And a lot of that information we can deduce by looking at feathers, which feathers have been molted, the condition, the color of feathers. All of those things can help us figure out how old, and also if it's a male or a female. Sometimes it's pretty straightforward. cardinals, male, female, look dramatically different. Other times with a chickadee, you really have to catch a female in April or May where she's missing feathers on her breast to keep the eggs warm to know for sure that it's a female. Otherwise, we have to put a ewe. And a ewe is just fine. We're acknowledging that we don't know, and that's as valuable as a male or a female in a lot of these different species. We hope to get one other bit of information before we let the birds go, and that's to use a wing ruler like this, and it measures the length from the wrist of the bird, the curve of their wing, all the way to the longest primary feather. And that can sometimes tell us if it's a male or a female. A couple of species, white-throated sparrow and slate-colored juncos, were able to tell that for certain. Other species, it helps to confirm what you might already be leaning towards. The hope is with the banding lab this year is to start 2 different projects at Wood Lake, and they're both color banding projects, where as we catch a bird born that year, we would put a certain color band on its leg. So say it's a yellow band for 2020. So a hatching year chickadee would get a yellow band. So from the years after that, whenever you saw a chickadee at one of our feeders and it had a yellow band, you'd know it was born in 2020. So in 2025, you'd know it was 5 years old. My plan right now is to do it with chickadees and then also barn swallows, which nest quite a bit around the nature center. So I feel we'd have a good chance of catching a lot of those first year birds, get those bands on them as well. Use the same color. So any bird with a yellow, both the barn swallow migratory species and the year-round resident chickadee, you would be able to tie to a certain year. Of course, 2021, we choose a different color. And that way we can have the people who come visit be part of this process. This is a mist net behind me, which is a bird banding tool, and it's actually part of the permit is a permission to use different types of traps. Mist net is one. A potter trap is a little trap that birds are still able to eat and are on their feet. This way they actually are flying into a net that they don't really see, and they fall into the hammock. We're able to gently pull them out, and I say gently pull them out. It takes quite a bit of time and practice, but people get really good at it after a while. You're able to pull them out safely, take them back to your banding station in a sack like this, where you're able to do the whole process that I talked about in the other segment. The nice thing about these nets is, or the important thing is that they're hard to see, so I'm not even sure how much you're able to pick up on the video, but it's small mesh, it's a light gray or a black color, and especially on cloudy days when it's still, they're almost impossible to see. Windy days, birds can often bounce out. There's so much tension on the net, so sometimes they'll get out. And that's fine too. We take whatever comes our way. The plan here at Wood Lake is to have a few different places where we set up these nets and hopefully start catching some birds. And that way we can track which birds are here. We can find out how long certain species might be able to live once we've been accumulating data for several years. American kestrels are the smallest falcon in North America. They're a diurnal hunter. This is a male with the gray on the head and the gray on the wings. Female would be more of that tawny brown throughout, with lots of those little black speckles. The female is a bit larger than the male, usually a third larger. Most males weigh between 80 grams and 120 grams. This bird is on a perch that has astroturf that provides a varied surface for their feet. Their feet are very important to make sure they stay in good shape, and flat surfaces will flatten out the feet and lead to more foot issues, which is one of the bigger issues that captive birds run into in their captivity. So lots of human-made surfaces like this daisy mat, or another common one would be using natural bark or stick perches from the wild. This little bird used to be called a sparrowhawk. So if you're wondering why I'm calling this a kestrel, it actually used to be called a sparrowhawk. And they're known for being really good hunters of small birds as well as small mammals. But their favorite summertime food are grasshoppers. And they'll often be seen hovering over prairies or open fields, looking for all kinds of different food, but primarily those grasshoppers, sometimes smaller snakes as well. But they'll hover just like a helicopter. They'll be in one place. They're one of the few birds that does it quite a bit. Lots of birds can do it. This is a bird that can do it for quite a while and very efficiently and effectively. Just like other falcons, it's a pretty quick bird. It's not going to be as fast as the larger peregrine or a prairie falcon, but it is pretty fast considering its size. And the speed comes from the shape of the wings, which is very pointy, very narrow and pointy, kind of like those of a jet. And it just allows them to move through the air that much quicker. The overall mass of the bird prevents it from being as fast as some of the bigger ones. So falcons, when they're born, are born covered in down, eyes are open. They can't do anything. They're kind of stuck in the nest for 3-4 weeks before they start to move. Another 3-4 weeks as they learn to fly and eat, and then probably another few weeks as they just spend time with their parents, being fed a little bit, just to get going. So they nest early, right around now, April, and they'll be out of the nest by the end of summer, maybe even middle of summer, on their way to becoming their own bird. This is a red-tailed hawk, and when I was in ornithology class, it was one of the Latin names that for some reason was the easiest for me to remember. Bardot Diet. And the reason we remembered it is my friend and I were big fans of Popeye, and of course one of the bullies in Popeye is Bluto. So we said Bluto goes to Jamaica, and it's stuck in my head now for 27 years or something. So it works. I'm not sure what the Jamaicensis means, but Bardot is a genus of hawks that has wide wings, allows them to soar. So oftentimes you'll see red tails soaring, and they're using the warm air coming off the ground, called a thermal, and they'll soar. Sometimes it'll just be big wide arcs, sometimes narrower arcs as they work their way up. If they're indeed migrating, which these birds sometimes will, they would just ride that thermal up to the very, very peak of it and then shoot out, go in the direction they want to, generally south in the fall, generally north in the winter. These birds are pretty big. A cat of comparable size would weigh about 8 or 10 pounds. Most red-tailed hawks are somewhere between maybe 1.5 and 2 pounds. So not very heavy. Most of what you're seeing are contour feathers, making them look a lot bigger, and their bones are mostly hollow, very, very strong, but mostly hollow. You could see that a second ago, the bright red of the tail. We'll see if this bird will show us that tail again. But once after their year they're born, so let's say a bird's born this April of 2020, when it grows in its first tail feathers, they're going to be banded black and white. The rest of its plumage will be very familiar to what you're seeing right now. And then next spring, when it molts out next summer, when it molts out that tail, it'll grow in as red. So for the first year or so, you can tell a red-tailed hawk how old it is, because if it still has that original juvenile tail. It's not something that is common within raptors. Usually their plumage is going to be the same throughout their life, always molting in and molting out new feathers, but the patterns, the colors will all be the same. So it's not generally easy to age them unless you see them in the nest or sometimes from behavior. But that tail for red tail is an easy one. So this barred owl, and all owls have some pretty unique and exciting adaptations, things that allow them to be successful being owls. A majority of owls that live in Minnesota are going to be active during the evening or nighttime hours, and because of that, their adaptations are different than a lot of other animals. And I'm going to talk about a few of those right now. So the first thing I want to point out are her eyes. This bird's eyes are brown. They might look black from afar, but if you're up close, you can tell they're a dark brown. The only other owl that you might find in Minnesota with brown eyes would be a barn owl. We see those very seldom. The rest of them, the other 10 species, all have yellow eyes. So if you see an owl with brown eyes and it's gray, you've got this bird right here, barred owl. But those eyes are, other than just the color, which is something that we can see, have some really neat things going on. First of all, they're really big. If we were to make her head as big as mine and her eyes grow at that same ratio, her eyes would be as big as baseballs. So a lot of the birds of an owl's head is dedicated to their eyes. And actually what we're seeing is the tip of the eyes. It goes in, it's like a light bulb with this would be the part that gets screwed in. The other part, these are the old school incandescent bulbs, would be in the back, and that also prevents their eyes from being able to move. So they can't be moving their eyes back and forth. So if they see something, you'll see them swivel their head pretty quickly. Doesn't go all the way around. It's about 270 degrees, not a full 360. But those eyes are hugely important. Now, getting back to the nighttime, eyes have two types of cells, rod cells and cone cells. The rod cells allow animals to see better in low amounts of light. Some people have more than others, but generally humans don't have a lot of rod cells. We're not generally successful being active at night. Owls have a high number of rod cells. Cone cells are where humans tend to have more. We tend to be able to see different colors. Blue, I don't have a whole lot of colors on. There's a green right here. Of course, that made her jump. But those different cells allow for different activities. So if you're active at night, having a lot of rod cells is important. So that's why they're able to be so successful at night. So they're able to see well at night, which is important. They're also using their ears. Now we can't see their ears, and we have these flaps that help us collect sound into our ear. And the owls, where her eyes are, they're sunken down into sort of a dish shape. Those dishes, facial discs, are going to collect sound and send them right to their ears. One's on the right, of course, one's on the left, but one's higher, one's lower. Depending on which ear picks up the sound first, the bird's going to know if the sound's above or below, and also left and right. And instead of having to go like this to hear better, they'll turn their eyes directly to where they're hearing the sound, so it gets their eyes and their ears working together. They know where something is now. They've pictured this, they have this triangulation image in their head. They know where to fly to, and that's what they're going to do next, is fly. Birds generally have a couple of choices, a couple of alternatives. Go really fast, go really slow. An animal like a falcon, a peregrine falcon, is going to go really fast. That is an adaptation. Owls generally go pretty slow. Slow because their feathers are set up in such a way that when they take a wing beat, it's nearly silent. You can hear a little bit, but not nearly as much as you would if you listen to a wood duck fly by, or even a robin. I mean, a lot of those wings are going to be much more streamlined and a lot quicker, and you'll actually hear the wing beat. Owls are slower, but they're also really quiet. Goes along really well with moving through the night. So they're not only under the cover of darkness, they're also coming in very quietly. Once they get to the animal they're hoping to eat, whether it's a mouse or a squirrel or a rabbit, they're going to use these talons down here to grab on. Those talons are really strong, and I read somewhere that one of the strongest forces in North America is a great horned owl. This is a bird a little bit larger than this one. And they grab on and they hold, and they're sort of ratcheted on. They're not just going to come loose. They really want to hold on to that animal, and then they're going to use their beak sort of as the knife. So the talons are going to serve as a fork to hold, and the beak is going to serve as a knife to cut and rip apart things, the animals, so they're able to eat it. If it's a mouse, they're going to eat it straight whole. If it's going to be a squirrel or a rabbit, they might just eat the head, but at least they'll start there and then pick away as much as they need to make sure their stomach is full. Hawks have a crop, so they're able to fill their stomach and then their crop as well, sort of a storage of extra food. Owls do not have that luxury, so you'll often see, like I said, rabbits or squirrels just with the head missing, and that's simply because there's only so much room in this bird's stomach. They're going to eat everything whole, and then when they're done, they will cast a pellet. And that pellet is going to be bones and fur, or bones and feathers, depending on what they've eaten, of their prey. The barred owl gets fed anywhere from 40 to 80 grams of food a day, depending on her current weight. So a lot of places that have captive birds will weigh them each and every day and dictate how much they feed them based on a target weight that's determined from lots of different resources, one of which would be the Raptor Center at the University of Minnesota, which is a leader in the country in terms of caring for raptors, both in a clinical sense, but also in a long-term residential sense. So this bird today is going to be fed a chick. So if you don't want to watch that, you might just want to turn your head for about a minute or so. But I'm going to hand her the chick, and we'll see if she eats it, and then we'll talk about how she deals with it. So she should hold on to it for a while. Sometimes she will grab it and tear off the head. That's where the most energy is, right in that head. It doesn't look like she's very hungry at this point, which is fine. You know, we can't force her to eat. We can offer her the food. She did eat the head, which, like I mentioned before, has the most energy in it. I'm guessing she'll eat the rest of this later. So when they're done eating, about 24 hours later, owls will cough up a pellet, and the pellet's going to be all the fur and bones of what they ate. So this looks like it was probably either a rat or something, not a chick, because it's not the yellowish color of the chick. So you can kind of get a sense of what they've been eating. If it's a full mouse or a vole, you can pull those things apart and actually put the skeleton back together. It's kind of a fun activity if you're into that kind of stuff. Hawks and falcons will also eat everything whole, but their bodies are able to digest the bones. So you'll know the difference between an owl and a hawk and falcon pellet from if there's bones in there. The bones of, say, a kestrel will be dissolved by their stomach acid, whereas the owls don't have that happening. So those are some facts about the barred owl. Once again, we're in Anoka County at Warrego Nature Center. They were very generous in letting us come and use their bird today. We just want to encourage people to get out to different nature centers and see these birds, or the Raptor Center when all the places open back up in the summer. So thank you, and once again, keep your eyes open and ears open for owls.
I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. Again, I encourage you to check out our live auction where there's dozens of items to bid on. So bid throughout the week, bid high, bid often. You can go to Woodlake Nature Center's website, or biddingowl.com. I hope everyone stays healthy and stays well, and we'll get through this together. Thank you and good night.